Good morning. Today we are working on CO5. I can use equivalent fractions to simplify a fraction and solve a proportion. So we need to know what equivalent means. Equivalency is having the same value. So we know 1/2. 2/4 is the same as 1/2. They are equivalent because we can simplify 2/4 down to 1/2. To find an equivalent fraction, you need to multiply or divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. In effect, you're multiplying or dividing by 1. So even though the numbers in the fraction will change, its value will not. Using a calculator, you can compare the decimal values of the original and the equivalent fraction. They should be the same. So if we had that 1/2 and we had 2/4, how can I find their decimal value? Jude?
1 divided by 2 and 2 divided by 4.
So if we take 1 divided by 2, we get 0.5. And if we take 2 divided by 4, we get 0.5. That's how we double check our work. Did I get the equivalent fraction? If I take my numerator, fraction bar means divide. So numerator divided by the denominator, I should get the same decimal for each fraction. They are equivalent if I can do that. If I get a different decimal place, they are not equivalent. Kaylin?
Could you also make the denominators to 100 and then put in a decimal point, like multiply 2 by 50 and then 1 by 50?
I hear what you're saying. That would work, but that's a whole lot of extra work that we don't need to do. So yes, you could give a common denominator and then find that they match, but that's so much more work than what we need to do. So in theory, yes, you can do that, but we don't want to take all of our time doing work we just don't have to do. All right, so I'm gonna scroll up. Write 2 equivalent fractions for each given fraction. Check your answer by comparing the decimal values of all 3 fractions. So here's what we're going to do. The first thing you do is we've got our first fraction is 3/7. You can multiply it by the same number. I like 2s. It's easy for me to work with. So 3 times 2 is 6. 7 times 2 is 14. Now I can go back and I can multiply this by 3, or I can multiply this by 2 again. They're all going to be equivalent fractions as long as I multiply by the same number. So maybe I'm going to multiply them all by that 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. 7 times 3 is 21. So now I need to know what is the decimal of each of these. So I need to pull out my calculator. And I need to say 3 divided by 7 is what? Addie.
I forgot my calculator at home.
Well, then you're going to have homework tonight. A dozen. Not right now. Who can answer the question? What is 3 divided by 7, Kaylin? 0.4 was a 0.43.
0.4.
Okay, so in my answer key, I rounded it to the 100th place. So always just get in the habit of rounding to the 100th. So if we round it to the 100th, it's 0.43. So what you want to do is you want to do 3 divided by 7, 6 divided by 14, 9 divided by 21. Did they all get 0.43? Rounding it to that 100th place. That's how we know if they're equivalent. If you divide each of these and it's not all 0.43, you know you did your math wrong somewhere. So if they're not getting the same decimal, you did your math wrong and you have to go back and find your mistake. Do not just do 3/7 and 6/14 and say, yep, I know the next one. No, we are getting in the habit of checking our work. Actually divide all three and make sure they all have the same decimal point. Yes?
Do you have to write down the decimal?
Yes, you have to write down the decimal. So that's showing that you're checking your work. You have to write down the decimal and make sure that all three of them match. Olivia.
You just like write the decimal that if they all equal to like right in the middle.
So this is how I did it.
Okay.
You could write it down here. I don't care, as long as it's organized and easy to read. I'm recording right now. You are doing that for this whole page. Let's see what else we have. Oh, now we have another thing to learn. So we're not continuing with that at the moment. We are going to look at our proportions, because I know you guys know how to do equivalent fractions. Let's move into what is a proportion. A proportion is two equivalent values from a form a proportion. And these are commonly seen as fractions. So when we work with proportions, we usually see that written out as a fraction. 1/2 equals 2/4. That is a proportion because they are equivalent. So you can solve for a missing value in a proportion by using equivalent fractions. Find the scale factor between numbers that are known, then apply the scale factor to the unknown value. What number did you multiply by? What number did you divide by? That is your scale factor. So if we had 1/2 to 2/4, what would my scale factor be, Judy? 2, because I multiplied by 2. So if I had a missing part, I could say, how did I go from 1 to 2? I multiplied by 2. Whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. So I have to multiply that denominator by 2. So the scale factor is what you're multiplying or dividing that numerator or denominator by. You use that to find your missing number. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So the scale factor is what you're multiplying or dividing the numerator or denominator by. So below, we have proportions. Find the value of n using equivalent fractions. Check your answer by comparing the decimal value of the two fractions. Yes, you need to list what your missing number is and the decimal. So do the dividing. 1 divided by 2 equals what? So what is my scale factor in this first one? 2 times what gives me 60? Well,
30.
2 times 30. So if I multiply by 30 on the bottom, I need to multiply by 30 on top. 1 times 30 is 30. What would my decimal be of 1 divided by 2? Peyton?
0.5.
That's what we have to do to answer these problems. Okay, so when we hear the word scale factor, it's kind of a scary new term, but we know what it means. Scale factor is what we're multiplying or dividing by to get that missing number. We're going to do the same thing on the bottom, but this time we have to go backwards. We have to divide down. So So how did we go from 12 to 72? We multiplied by 8. So now we need to divide by 8 to find our answer. So if it was 12, oh, sorry, not 8. 12 times what gets me 72?
8.
Not 8. I was wrong. I was too fast. Henry, 6. So 12 times 6 is 72. So what number times 6 is 24? I could say 24 divided by 6, or I just know my math facts and I know 4 times 6 is 24. Then I need to find my decimal. 4 divided by 12 or 24 divided by 72. They should both equal 0.33. So rounding to that 100th place. Then at the very bottom, we have word problems. We put it into, we're getting the help there on how to make proportions out of our word problems. Solve for the missing part, solve for the n, and write the decimal. So we're doing the same thing over and over. It just looks in different ways on how we're doing it. Whether it's word problems, whether we're multiplying or dividing, finding that scale factor, what we multiply or divide by on the top, we have to do to the bottom, or if we know what we do on the bottom, we have to do the same thing on the top. Any questions on those equivalent fractions? So when we hear the word proportion, all it means is that they're equivalent. Proportions are equivalent fractions. If you are listening at home, we hope you are well and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.